Standing here in front of the Dunlop Mausoleum. I'm going to show you our brand new map. We just had printed and delivered. And I'm going to take you on one of the most popular attractions in Rose Hill. And that has to do with the Allman Brothers Band, members who are buried here. But on the map, we created a mushroom tour. So if you see these little mushroom icons, which harkens to the 1970s and 80s of the Allman Brothers, that we're gonna hit the stops that most of the fans want to hit, and it's on like a loop tour. So I'm standing right here in front of Dunlop, and we're gonna take this dotted line. I'm gonna head downhill, down to Soldier Square, the Confederate cemetery. And then we're gonna stop here. This is where you should park, down near the river. And then we'll walk up, or in my case, we'll ride my bike up. And we're gonna visit the first of the mushrooms, and that's where the Allman Brothers Memorial is, where these guys are buried. And then from there, we're gonna continue along the river. We're gonna hit Elizabeth Reed's, we named a song after her. And then we'll come back up the hill, swing down. This will be Martha Ellis, otherwise known as Little Martha. And then get back on. We're gonna head, and then this is a spur. So from here, we're gonna head over the spur. Phil Walden was their, he started the record label for them, Capricorn Records, founded in 1969. From there, we're gonna head up to Holly Ridge. And this is, right there you can see in the caption, this was where they shot, the first album cover. And we're gonna loop on back, take this spur again, catch it here. We're gonna head uphill. A little windy out here. Head back uphill, make a right, and then come all the way back to Central Ave, where we started here. So, let's get on the bike and get rocking and rolling. And by the way, this is a 1 mile loop trail, so you can walk it or ride it or drive in your vehicle. It's really easy. But beware of all the terraces in the hills. Right inside the main gate entrance is a beautiful monument dedicated to Freemasonry. Right here at the corner at Eglinton Square is the Woolahan Monument. And as you can see, it's a life-size replica of a Masonic altar. And me being a Freemason myself, this is absolutely incredible. We have the two main columns, Boaz and Jachin. Look at this sculpture. I mean, that is a cushion that you would kneel on. We have a checkerboard pattern, just like inside the lodge. And on the altar, we have the Holy Book. It's the guiding light. It could be a Bible, it could be a Quran, Torah. And then on top of that book, we have the square and compasses, with the compasses on top of the square indicating it's a master mason. And these are some nice gifts that people left behind. Usually when people leave coins behind, it's an indication of saying, hello, I visited your grave. But this is really nice. Nice pocket knife. Yeah, this is a beautiful, the 3 steps. 3 steps are symbolic as well. But what a beautiful grave dedicated to a father and son who are Masons. Definitely stop and see this one. All right, back on the bike. So as you head down the hill, you want to aim for the big Georgia State flag. This is where Soldier Square is and all the Confederate graves. But right before that is one of the oldest sections of the cemetery, the old Hebrew burial grounds, established in 1844. So some really old monuments in there. And then right here, underneath this big old oak tree, let's come on down here real quick. And you can see how there's all the Confederate graves. And then we're going to continue on downhill. Oh boy. Whoa. It's tough doing this with one hand. We're going to head on downhill towards the tracks, run parallel to the tracks, and then basically right down there is where we're going to park, and then I'll show you how to get up to the Allman Brothers Memorial gravesite. So under these big, beautiful old pine trees is the bandstand, and they'd have bands play right in this little raised stage. And you'll see right over here, this is terrace seating for people to listen to the band. So again, this is where you want to park it, right next to railroad tracks, underneath the signal. And then we're going to take a walk up here to the Allman Brothers site. Short walk. Kind of tucked in this little ravine here. It's beautiful. Sunlight hitting all this bright green grass. And then right up here, that's the memorial to the Allman Brothers. We'll meet you there. And here we are. Take one of these steps up. So this is Butch Trucks' grave. Died 2017. This is Greg Allman. Died 2017. His brother Dwayne Allman. Died in 71. And Barry Oakley died a year later. Both died of motorcycle accidents, happening like a mile apart. And these are some of the patrons that take care of this sacred spot to the Allman Brothers. So to recap on where we're at, we started right here. We went downhill. We headed towards the big flag. On the right was the Hebrew burial ground. Then we swung around down to the tracks. We parked here at the bandstand. Saw the rock bench seating. And then we walked up this nice little path here to their memorial. Beautiful illustration. Who did that? Now, seriously, this was completely challenging. I mean, you see, like, I'm gonna look up. We're tucked away in this little kind of ravine, but it is so steep. And so to put this on a map where you can navigate by, definitely one of the most challenging maps I've done. So we're gonna head down. We're gonna hit Elizabeth Reed's. Yeah, the backstory to that, pretty incredible, if you know the truth. Meet you there. Right before we head uphill, just to our left here is the site of Elizabeth Bessie Jones Reed Napier. So right at the bottom of this nice hill, very secluded, very private, very peaceful. Right in front of the, well, you know, the railroad tracks were put in much later than when the cemetery originated, but she would have had a nice, beautiful view of the river right there. Well, this is significant for the Allman Brothers because it was a hookup spot for, like I said, a nice private hookup spot for Dickie Betts and the girlfriend of Boss Skaggs back in the very early 70s. And so he wrote the song, the original instrumental, in memory of Elizabeth Reed. And that song appeared on their second studio album in 1970 called Idlewild South. So he named the song after her, right here. And this is where we are, right here. But in actuality, and you can see in later years, he's laughing about it in an interview. Oops. It was actually dedicated to the girlfriend he was having an affair with, man. So that's that site. From here, we're gonna swing on back up the main Central Avenue Hill and then make a right. Yeah, so basically following. Yeah, we were just here at Elizabeth Reed. We're going to turn left up Central Avenue, go uphill, then make a right downhill into Hawthorne Ridge, and that's where we're going to see Little Martha. And when you see the Price obelisk, this is where you want to make a right, and we're going to head downhill into the terraces. And way up there on the far side, it's Oak Ridge Cemetery. So our next stop is Martha Ellis, right down at the bottom of this hill. And then we're gonna kind of cut in that way to visit her. Parking is really tight right here, so, but there's this little section here you can slip your car into. But best to walk from where I parked there. And there's Little Martha. Let's go visit her. That's great. She's taken care of. Those beautiful flowers. And she is, in her sculptures, she's holding a bouquet of flowers. And that is symbolic of the beauty and the frailty of life. She gets a lot of visitors. People leave things behind, say hello. She died in 1896 at 12 years old. So this was a monument her parents created to their baby. Now, for the Allman Brothers, significance is she was thought to have been the inspiration for the song Little Martha. And we'll pull this up on the map so I can get it right here. Let's put this down. So she's one of the most notable and visited monuments in the cemetery. And it was Duane Allman's composition, Little Martha. But according to Allman family members, the true origin was attributed to Duane's former girlfriend. However, you know, run with what you want, but that's coming directly from the family. But, you know, it doesn't stop us from highlighting her. Fan favorite, and to show you where she is on the main map, where we are right now. We went up Central Ave, we made a right, we went down. This is where we parked, and then we just walked over into Hawthorne Ridge, and there's Martha Ellis. Next, we're going to take this spur and head up to visit Phil Walden, and then all the way up to Holly Ridge to the Bond Johnson Monument, and then we're going to come on back that way too. For your second right-hand turn, headed into Holly Ridge, you're going to make it at the Laguerre Obelisk, and there's a little sign here too. So we're going to make a right down here. We're going to head over and visit Phil Walden. Standing here in front of the Laguerre Monument, and this is facing Oak Ridge Cemetery on the west side of Rose Hill Cemetery. And I'm going to pan towards the river to show you the beautiful landscaping and the terracing that went into this cemetery when they built it in 1840. Over there, that's Magnolia Ridge, Pine Ridge. Up on top of the hill, that's Central Avenue Division. Hawthorne Ridge, Triangle Square. Up there at the very top, right behind that big pine, that's the main entrance. And then over here is, I believe this is Madison Street entrance. You can just see right through those trees there. And then back up here on Oak Ridge. So it's a great vantage point to get an excellent overview of the cemetery on this side of the cemetery. And back over here on Central Ave, once you summit that hill up there, there's a whole nother side to it. It's just as gorgeous. You want to stop when you see William Lee Ellis's box monument above ground on the left, but on the right is a gorgeous, gorgeous statue of an angel dedicated to the memory of Mary Frances Bozeman. Look at that. Sunlight's hitting her perfectly. So I do believe she had a sword. That's gone. A lot of these monuments were damaged in the tornado of, I believe it's 1954. I'll have to check my map. And they were preserved by Joey Fernandez, among other people. But Joey's the man today. Joey and his Rose Hill Preservation and Restoration Company is one of the publishers of this map, along with Cemetery Angels. So we're going to head just up these stairs here and find Phil Walden. This one's a little difficult to find, but right up here, here's Philip Michael Walden. And he was responsible for being the founder of Capricorn Records in 1969, and he launched the Allman Brothers Band So he's the man. And he's buried here with Peggy Walden. We're gonna head back right on down here. And you can kind of see that Bozeman statue right there. So just down. Okay, this is Holly Ridge I'm coming into. And this backs up to the railroad tracks and river with a great vantage point. And we're gonna see the Bond Angel. Oh boy, slow down. Oh, sorry about that. The Bond Angel and Johnson. And basically these are two crypts, two large crypts at Water's Edge. And we're gonna walk down these steps here and see the river side of these crypts. Pretty incredible. And that's where the Allman Brothers had a photo shoot. I'll tell you more about that. But check out the story of Bond on the map. Pretty incredible story involving murder. Well, as long as we're here, I might as well tell you the story. First, a little about the actual angel itself. This particular angel is actually a replica. The original was commissioned and it was made in Italy and it was being shipped over. It made it into Kentucky, and one of the last legs of its journey down here in Rose Hill, it was confiscated, or basically was stolen. And that stolen angel sits in Cave Hill Cemetery in Kentucky. And it had to do with, Bond being a Southern plantation owner, a Confederate, and then, Kentucky being a Union state. The arm, which is broken off, was believed to have been lost in that 1954 tornado that hit Rose Hill. Killed like 6 people in the area and just caused enormous amount of destruction here in the cemetery. But now about Bond himself. He was a colonel, was one of the wealthiest plantation owners in Georgia, but he was killed, shot to death. I can't say murder, by his overseers. Basically, the head guy who overseers all of his slaves. Well, this guy was a real MFer. He had severely whipped one of Bond's slaves, the overseer's name being Lucius Brown. And so Bond fired him outright. But he was Bond was tolerant, he was good at heart. He treated his slaves as best he could, given that era and what they were, basically just property of his and laborers. But he treated them good, so much so that slaves in the era spoke highly of their owner, their master, and they bragged about being a Bond slave. Well, Bond got Brown a job at his brother-in-law's nearby plantation, but that still wasn't enough for Brown. He was still pissed at being fired, and so he continually to target Bond's slaves. He would just do shit to them, brutalize them, physically and mentally, until Bond had enough. And so basically this guy Brown just goaded him into another incident and brought him all the way out to Albany, Georgia. And when Bond saw him beating another slave off of a wagon, Bond approached on horseback with his cane and hit Brown 3 times, knocking him to the ground. When Bond jumped off his horse, he gave chase to Brown, and that's when Brown pulled out a pistol and shot him through the chest. I read that he didn't realize he even got shot, still giving chase, and I think caught up to Brown and punched him in the face, and then he collapsed and he knew he was dying. There were a couple of white witnesses, and they later testified on Brown's behalf that it looked like to them it was an act of self-defense. I mean, a guy comes at you on a horse, starts beating you with his cane, jumps off, gives chase, and he gets shot. And so ended his life in 1859. So down the stairs between Bond and Johnson's memorial, or their crypts, we have the railroad tracks and the river. Oh look, the river is even kind of bluish today. It almost matches my illustration. Normally it is chocolate freaking disgusting brown. But this is the spot of a photo shoot that took place by, let me consult the map here, photographer Stephen Pally. He shot the album, the back cover of the Allman Brothers 1969 debut album, and you'll notice this. You'll see the band members posing here on this facade between these two columns. Also, another image from that same photo shoot in '69 of the band appearing on the railroad tracks, but that particular photo appeared on a much later album in 2005 titled Gold. So that's cool. And as long as you're down here, you know, here's the matching Johnston facade, but as long as you're down here, take a walk down this path down to the little creek, and there's some, and then cross the creek, and there's some more incredible crypts, like the Washington Crypt and the Adams Flanders Crypt. So nice little hike down there. I'm gonna head back up. There's a little bit of a story about this monument. I mean, this is huge, and they say that, so Bond had his house right up College Avenue. Right, it's kind of like a straight line from this monument on the river's edge all the way up to his house, and some people think there was actually a tunnel that he built connecting the two. And there is kind of some evidence of that here in the cemetery. I'm not gonna say where, but yeah, very cool. All right, we'll continue on. As you're headed back uphill towards Central Avenue, this is a great spot to take a nice little rest underneath this really, really old magnolia tree. There's a little bench there, and it's a great vantage point to view the cemetery looking west towards Oak Ridge Cemetery, the western section of Riverside. Really get that terracing effect with the sunlight hitting it and the shadows. It's a nice quiet spot. And incidentally, this is where Joey Fernandez, the Rose Hill preservationist and restorationist, this is his favorite spot. So if you look on the map, you'll see a little tiny hidden figure of Joey right underneath this tree. And to know where that is, you got to know where the chess set family is. So if you look at this family plot, this is the Ross family, but they look like chess pieces. We have the king, and his two wives, the two queens and his son, I think daughters or another son, but that's an excellent family plot to visit. Beautiful sculptures. And then once we pass that, we'll hit Central Avenue up there, make a right, and we'll head out. One last stop before we make our way out of Rose Hill, and that is the Masonic burial plot here on the right. This was designated for brothers of Freemasonry who maybe couldn't afford a big monument, and they had a special plot designated towards them. Me being a Freemason, this is where I embedded myself in my map. And you can see me standing right there. I'm wearing a straw hat. By the way, here's Megan Rose in the red dress. And right where we started, at the Walheenan, that's Shannon Scott. These two are partners in the Cemetery Angels. And if you could, guys, please donate to either one of these organizations. We would really appreciate it.